So for our next speaker, we have Vivek Desai, or I should say Dr. Vivek Desai. He has a PhD, but he has been a wonderful supporter of HSC, and we've known him for the past 2 years, have been doing camp here, and he is just working tirelessly, and we really appreciate everything you do. And just to give you a bit of background, Vivekji grew up in a family of Baba Muktananda's devotees. Right after his graduation from Princeton University in January of 2014 with a PhD in molecular biology, Vivekji moved into Shanti Mandir ashram to serve full-time. Currently he serves as a yoga philosophy instructor and events coordinator. He holds several degrees and is a student of the Sanskrit language. He has been teaching yoga philosophy for almost a decade, and his focus is on the relevance and practicality of the ancient scriptures in our modern lives. Thank you.
When Ravi walks in the room, we know. Okay, let's begin with the invocation mantra. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviyam Kaivavahe Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome to our afternoon class. We changed our location, knowing that it's afternoon, and I wasn't there for the previous session, but it was a controversial topic to begin with, women in Hindu epics. So there's a lot of heat in that room. I could feel it just walking in there. So I said, temperature-wise and energy-wise, I said let's just, as Indians would say, shift it to a new location. So that's what we did. And I've been giving this topic, Shiva in Ramayana and Mahabharata, 30 minutes. So okay, I've got the work cut out for me. And where do we begin? Ramayana and Mahabharata themselves are long epics, and Shiva's role in that, and I was there for the previous guest speakers sessions, and Shiva's role was not really touched upon. So we could begin at so many different places, but what I'll try to do is, instead of telling a lot of stories which we all might know or might not know, but which we can find in books, in different retellings, different speakers and narrators and kathakars share. They're all online too. PDF downloads, online different websites and YouTube. So instead of telling many different stories, what I'll try to do is focus on one or two and bring out its relevance, its meaning for our lives here today. Because these are ancient texts, but remember, they're timeless at the same time. The word we use is Sanatan, which has been used so many times in the past 2 days. Sanatan means timeless and universal. So this is applicable at all times, in all places, no matter who you are. If you have the willingness to read them, listen to them, and understand them, contemplate them, it will transform your life really inside out. And a lot of times in Hindu dharmic discussions we hear about our culture, our heritage, but oftentimes, and Ravi, excuse me if I use you as since you're right here, and so accessible. Ravi was just instructing someone, please remove your shoes outside, but he was smart enough, quick enough to catch the fact that he himself had slippers on. So a lot of times we get into that space where, because of our human extroverted tendency, we're always wanting to change the world, bring peace in the world, spread the message of Sanatana, not in a conquest kind of way, but just be more active advocates and promoters of our, and torchbearers of our tradition. But we forget that this is a living tradition. Sanatan means living tradition. So first and foremost, we have to embody it. We ourselves have to embody it. And this invocation mantra that we began with talks about that. Om Sahana Vavatu. The whole mantra, if you read the translation, we don't have time to go into that because I have to get to Shiva. But if you think about this mantra, it's talking about not just me, but us. No, Saha, no. No means two, you and I, we, all of us. So life is not just about me. Life, what is life anyway? Life is only when I'm able to act and interact with my surroundings, with other people. So this ability to interact, the two elements in this equation, me and my world, meaning me and you. So right now I'm speaking and you listening. That's what's creating a class or this atmosphere. So two parties involved. And to understand that, I have to start with myself. If I want my world to change, instead of wanting others to change, I have to begin with myself. And if you read and listen to stories of Shiva, this is what I feel I get, and this is what excites me the most, that when you read it and something just clicks, and you say, oh wow, I can apply this. And the reason, many times people ask me, but who teaches you all this? How do you know this is the right interpretation? Because it changes me, it changes my understanding. It has an impact on my life, on my interactions, and therefore it's real for me. That's where faith comes in too. We have Shraddha, we talked about Shraddha. The faith that these teachings, because they're timeless, if we focus upon them, if we ruminate over them, we'll learn something from them. So as we go into the stories, we'll see that it's about first looking at myself. Peace in the world can only happen if I start with this one, this person, the closest person who I have to deal with 24/7. And we find in both Ramayana and Mahabharata, we'll focus on two stories. Let's begin with Shiva's icon, symbol, Shiva's image, form, and his form and stories are related. Name, form, and stories, these are all related. So the name Shiva, which means auspiciousness, sacred, the sanctity of life. His murti, his form, if you look closely, there's so many aspects to it. One of the most predominant ones, obvious ones, is a river flowing out of his head. It's oozing out of him, which, as we know, is river Ganga or Ganges, as you know. So river Ganga flowing out of him. And then this is a ubiquitous story. You find it's all pervasive, right? In not just Ramayana and Mahabharata, and that's why I'm picking this one. But you find it in other Puranas and many other texts. And references to it, retellings of it. It's one of the most universal stories in the Hindu narratives. So Ganga is coming out of him. What is Ganga? Ganga represents purity, right? First, it's flowing, first of all. Like a living demonstration. So it's flowing, it's pure, white in color, and peaceful. The word Shanta, Shanti, which also came about. We chanted right now, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So it's peaceful. Then that's what's flowing out of him. So he's not expecting other people to give him peace, other people to give him love. He is giving it, and if you think about it, he's not just giving it, it's flowing out of him. It's not that he has created it, that it is his. It's just naturally. He has his eyes closed. He's not meditating on or planning. This is a direction it should flow in. this is how it should flow, this is the weight and the velocity at which it should flow. He has not done any mathematics, Bernoulli's equation and this and that. I'm being funny, but you get the point that this is what we do in life, because when we give something, we're always calculating how much to give, when to give, how to give, who to give it to. That's the most important. And what are we going to get out of this back? So to understand Shiva, you have to understand what's coming out of him, because only what you have can you give. What you give is basically what you have. You know, if I ask somebody, give me $100, if the person doesn't have it, he cannot give it to me. But when a person gives something, I know he had it. So here Shiva is giving Ganga to the world, right? The source of Ganga is Shiva. He's giving Ganga to the world. So what is he giving? He is giving this stream of loving kindness that's flowing out of him naturally, spontaneously. That means he is an embodiment of that loving Karuna Avataram, the avatar, the embodiment, the descent, the incarnation, the living incarnation of compassion, of loving kindness, Karuna. And the Shiva Ate begins, Om Jaya Gangadhar. So who do we salute to, who do we hail? He who holds Ganga upon his head. It's coming out of him, He's giving it to the world, not expecting anything in return. And what is Ganga? Now you see the links. You go to Mahabharata and you find the source of Mahabharata is in Ganga. Because a king named Shantanu once, he's just doing his morning ablutions and he finds a bewitching, enchanting woman there, distracted from his prayers all of a sudden, and he goes to her and says, who are you? She just came out of the river, Ganga, and she doesn't answer, she's silent. And he says, he expresses his feelings for her and he says, will you marry me? And then she says, only if you agree to my conditions. And this is why it's timeless. All the married men over there, there's like Nikunj is nodding. The conditions are put forth. Only if you abide by my conditions. If you ask me any question, I will leave you. Do not ask me any questions. Do not judge my actions. He's in love, so he says, okay, whatever floats the boat in the river. So there he is. He marries Ganga, and years pass by in marital bliss, all honeymoon phase, all nice and good, and they're enjoying each other's company. They have their firstborn child, and Ganga peacefully takes that baby, walks to the river and drowns him. And Shantanu watches this. He's aghast. It's like, what did she do? As soon as he's about to ask, what did you do to the product of our love? He remembers the condition put forth. If you ask me any question, I will leave you. So he refrains. She does it second time, because they have a second baby, and she does the same thing. She follows the same trajectory: birth and immediately dissolution. Third time, fourth time, fifth time, sixth time. This is getting too much for Shantanu. This no heir, obviously, to the throne. But what is she doing? And finally, the eighth son, the eighth baby, is about to be down, and he cannot hold it anymore. And he says, "Stop, woman. Are you a mother or a monster? What are you doing?" She says, "Okay, you asked a question. That's it. This relationship is over. See ya. This relationship is over. You cannot ask me any questions. But since you've asked me a question, I will answer before leaving. Remember I told you, do not judge my actions. You don't even know what I was doing." He says, "Of course I know. I'm seeing." "Yeah, but you're seeing with your two eyes. Let me give you a little backstory. She says, do you know who you are? Before you judge me, do you even know who you are? You don't. You think you're this king running this kingdom, wanting your heir, falling in love with me. This is your delusion. This is Maya. You know, Maya is not just those who want to destroy the world, who want to be destructive and aggressive, but Maya is also those who want to change the world, those who want others to be loving, others to be peaceful. That's also Maya. So you're wanting me to be a certain way and judging my actions as cruel is also part of Maya. You're deluded because all you see is this much. You know, we think Gandha is blindfolded. I'm sure in the women's role that must have come up. Gandha is blindfolded, Dhritarashtra is blind, but we're all like that. So all you see is this much. You have a limited perspective. That is Maya. Let me tell you who you are. You, in your previous life, were a celestial being, and so was I. We fell in love in the heaven. We were in 7th heaven. And we were cursed for that. So we are here as mortals.
Like cursed for falling in love?
Details,
okay.
You know, 30 minutes, how much, some loving kindness, compassion.
Even Krishna stopped at 700 verses.
Because, you know, for me it's one story. And I will leave a lot of cliffhangers because that's what the scriptures do, so I'll blame it on the scriptures. That's why we have so many scriptures, because it's one story. You can say Shiva's role, just talk about Shiva. I cannot. Because I have to invoke all these other characters, because Shiva is incomplete without Vishnu, and so on and so forth. So, where was I? They're down on earth. I know where. They're down on planet Earth. But on my way down, I met 8 Vasus, another group of celestial beings, who were cursed for stealing the cow of sage Vashisht. And the 8 of them pleaded to me that, you know, we have been cursed to be born as mortals, but we enjoy heaven, we enjoy USA. So, so just limit our time frame. And we have negotiated with Vashishta, and he has said, okay, just like any Indian, you just bargain a little bit. And it's negotiated. So the sort of the footnote is that, okay, you're cursed to go down there, but you'll be back in 1 year. So yeah, I'll reduce it even more. In a few days, you'll be back to heaven. So they pleaded me that for those few days, we want to be with you. We want to be born from you because you're divine too. So we want to maintain our divinity. So based on their plea, their request, I was fulfilling that request. I was feeling blessed. They were feeling blessed, and they were being liberated. So this 8th baby that you've just stopped me from drowning, this 8th one will be known as Bhishma, who you heard about, and his life will be full of suffering. So who is compassionate? You or me? And who is cruel, me or you? Okay, bye-bye. You know, so think about that, king, before you think you know everything. And this is the beauty of the Vedic tradition, that you cannot know everything. All you know is a few data points. Here's my background in molecular biology will come in handy here, because sometimes uncles and aunties will ask me, you know, so what do you do? What do you do with your degree? This is what I do. No, but people ask that, but why did you choose this? And I said, well, I didn't feel like that was my dharma, that was my swadharma. I felt a calling to this. That's what the Gita says too. But yeah, but that's good for reading, not for actual practice. I'm sure they'll stop their children from reading these dangerous scriptures. So when you have a few data points, in science, we're allowed to make a conclusion. Okay, but on the condition that this is provisional. Do you all understand that word, provisional? It could change anytime. It's just useful for now. So for day-to-day living, for daily functioning, of course we need to label things, we need to judge and act and react in a certain way. But remember, it's not complete knowledge. These are provisional, temporary, it's just functional and transient. Because as you get more data points, as his vision expanded, when Shantanu didn't know this backstory, he didn't know the past and he didn't know the future. Ganga knew, and therefore she was calm, she was peaceful, white dressing, perfectly serene, an embodiment of serenity, as she's described, embodiment of purity. Because Shantanu's problem, look at it, it's all there. It's, you know, this is, I thought, okay, the other speakers have already done all the hard work, so all I can do is just bring out what's obviously there and just bring it in a new light, so I don't have to research so much. I've done enough research in my life. So it's all there in the story. Shantanu's problem was not the other person. His problem was his attachment to his children, my children. So he thought of the events as birth, happiness, birth equals happiness, and that sounds a bit harsh, but that's what it is. Death equals misery or sorrow. This anguish was because my baby died. Ganga was calm because she knew they are born from me, they played in my lap for a while, and they dissolved back into me. Shantanu didn't know the river and Ganga are the same, one and the same. Remember, he asked her, "Who are you?" and she did not answer. Because she knows that when you know, you're silent. When you don't know, then you speak. That's hard to say for one who's speaking right now. But that's the truth. So this is karma. Because the children were simply suffering, and suffering again is not the right word, but it was simply all the actions were playing out an unfoldment of previous actions. And in that light, no one is innocent, no one is guilty. Everybody performs actions, and we have to face the consequences of those actions. Now this Bhishma also had a backstory, which we don't have time to go into right now. Why he was so, it's not that Shantanu is to be blamed for Bhishma's fate, because Bhishma was instrumental in the stealing of the cow. He was the one who instigated the other 7. Let's gang up and, let's get this cow. So his negotiation was a little bit different. That okay, no, I can't negotiate with you because you were actually leading this act, but you'll become famous. A typical Indian. And Ganga and Shanta are also typical Indians, because it's like, have you heard we know how Indians speak because we are Indians. Actually, so that's what Ganga is saying. Actually, I know. So that's what's going on here. What's coming out of Shiva is this wisdom, and he doesn't claim this as his wisdom, as his love, because Ganga is not Shiva's. It comes from Brahma. So yes, the exciting bit. Brahma has Ganga held in his water pot, in his kamandal. Because of the efforts of a king named Bhagirath, because of his intense penance, he forces Brahma to let Ganga out of his water pot. On her way, she touches Vishnu's feet, or foot rather, thumb, and becomes useful. And finally, Shiva has to lock her in his matted locks to make her useful for human beings. Because of her force, she would have otherwise destroyed life on this planet. So the reason I'm writing this is now, look, Ganga, this wisdom, this loving kindness that's exuding out of Shiva is there with Brahma too, but there are no temples to Brahma. Have you noticed that? Brahma is not worshipped. I'm the first one.
Except one.
Yeah, there's one. So there's always an Indian who says, but I know. Brahma was not even mentioned in this HSC camp until I brought him up. The reason is because he keeps Ganga locked in his water pot. What is that? That is wisdom and loving kindness that is within us that we don't use. The potential is there. Dormant, that's the Shakti, the divine force within us. Dormant, but not worthy of worship, because he's keeping it to himself. He's not even using it, not drinking it, not giving it, not doing anything with it. It's just there, sitting there. By the effort of a king, and today in Hindi, any kind of mammoth task is called Bhagiyati Prayatna. Prayatna means effort, Bhagiyati, effort like that of King Bhagiyat. Because in Shiva Sutras, there's little Shiva Sutras for Ravi and for everyone, that in Shiva Sutras it says, who is a seeker? Because we all claim to be seekers. What's the definition of a seeker? Prayatna sadhaka, he who makes an effort. So by effort, by making an effort to bring these teachings to life, by embodying them in our day-to-day lives, Guru's grace, Vishnu's foot, the symbol of Guru's grace. Because when we make an effort, there's grace that comes from above, so to speak, or from within, that helps us. Because we have made an effort. Grace is always present, but now it's palpable. So when we make an effort, and the old adage, God helps those who help themselves, same thing. Now Ganga has expanded. Before it was, in Kashmir Shaivism, this is called contraction. She's contracted. Anu, the Anu word came up in terms of science yesterday, atom, but Kashmir Shaivism uses Anu as a limited viewpoint that a person has that causes conflict. Back to the invocation mantras, Ma vidvisha vahe, may there never be conflict between us. May you and I never misunderstand each other. The root of that is contraction, not bringing out these teachings in our lives. When it expands by grace and by effort, then it begins to ooze out of us. And now people might say, I'll end with this, because I only have 30 minutes, but you can only give what you have. But what if the problem is that where do we get it from? Because the world doesn't give it to us. Things, money, and any object we get from other people, we get from different sources. But this loving kindness, where do we get it from? Because the world doesn't. World is always cruel and harsh and can be mean and insensitive, unkind. So why should I be nice? This is a problem. We hear it so many times and we feel it, we think about it. What do I get out of it anyway? Shiva doesn't say that, because a story known as churning of the ocean, Samudra Manthan, one of the other popular stories in Ramayana, Mahabharata and all the other Puranas, what is Shiva given by the world? Poison, halahal. He is given halahal. And does he complain? Then the world gave me halahal. And why should I give them Ganga? The world will always give you halahal, because that's what they have. They churned that, and nobody is willing, and people say Shiva is a destroyer. But how is it a destroyer? Because he's actually saving. The concept of destruction and savior don't fit in this worldview, in the dharmic worldview, because it's not destruction of things, and we can go into this offline. But the world here, this is The world and Shiva, the potential within us. The world will always give halahal. I say always because this is exaggerating to make it more dramatic. But there are loving people that are inspiration to us, that make us act in a more compassionate way. But most often than not, we have difficulties in life, and not just people, but situations. Even weather, sometimes weather is not nice, and people are not, just like now, we had to move out here because it was not pleasant there. But Shiva doesn't complain, he only gives back Ganga because he's in touch with that within himself. He's not expecting others to give it to him. He's giving infinitely, without conditions, naturally and spontaneously, because if you remember in the discussion last night, the problem of evil came up. But that word doesn't apply here because, Hindus or Sanatana Dharma, from yoga perspective, people say, well, what's yoga's answer? What's the Hindu answer to the problem of evil? But why should I answer? Why should we answer? Because the question itself is irrelevant. The problem is not evil, the problem is ignorance, avidya. The person doesn't know. The people giving him halahal don't know. They have a limited perspective. So he's not angry at them. He's not angry at them. To say evil is a judgment. He's not angry at them. When you say evil, there's a reaction that comes out of you. There's no reaction from Shiva. There's only giving. And that's because he doesn't see that as evil. He has infinite perspective. What in Shaivism it says Madhya Vikasa, the center has expanded. When the center expands, Chidananda Labha, Chit consciousness, which we talked about, Ananda, peace or bliss, independent of any happening, Labha is gained because he has infinite vision. And therefore, the problem is ignorance. And this, even to say a problem is sort of force-fitting it, press-fitting it. But it's the condition, it's a human condition that we are prone to only think in limited terms. What Shiva's stories, the churning of the ocean and the Ganga Avtaran, churning of the Samudra Manthan and Ganga Avtaran, descent of Ganga, what they teach, or what we can learn from them, from these two stories, from Shiva's role in these two stories, from Shiva's role in Ramayana and Mahabharata and all the other epics, is to generate that loving kindness, that potential within us, to manifest that potential, and to keep giving without thinking I'm giving. So that's Shiva's role in Hindu epics. So we'll have some time for question and answers.
Maybe 2-3 questions.
Okay.
I'll start.
Oh, okay.
It was shy. So